Hi, I'm Joe Caruso, and today I'm having a conversation with Shawn Thomas. Shawn's agreed to have an open dialogue with me. While he's not a client of mine, and we've only had one conversation before, this conversation will resemble the kind of conversations I have with my clients weekly. Please welcome Shawn.
Hey, Joe, good to see you, man. Good to see you again.
Good to see you again. How are you?
Fantastic, fantastic. We're just living in the dream of hot weather here in Nashville.
Hot weather in the snowstorm.
Exactly.
How's your mind today?
I was thinking about this question, Joe. My mind is like a satellite dish open to all of the different frequencies of the universe. How do you like that one?
My mind is more like a steel sieve, but I like that. That's great. I often open with the question with clients of how is your mind, so they can understand the fact that almost everything in the world has to be perceived through their mind. And the mind is a big reflection of how we see ourselves. And so some days we're really strong, and some days we're not as strong with our minds. And that can be based on self-confidence, awareness, achievement, being whelmed, or inner conflict, or happiness. And that helps us then frame up how we're going to talk. I've got some questions I already want to ask you based on our last conversation. Can I break right into it?
Let's do it.
Okay. So can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are today as the founder and CEO of Accelerators Organization?
Sure. So I grew up in Alaska, Army brat, turned boy band member, turned Ringling Brothers circus performer, turned broke, struggling entrepreneur, turned entrepreneur, who had a business for 11 years, successfully exited that business when I was 43 after 11 years. Took a few years off at the beach, learned a lot about social media, Instagram specifically, started a personal brand, answering questions on social media, and then took that hobby and turned it into a business, consulting business, and started Accelerators Organization, which is an organization similar to a lot of the organizations that individuals like yourself and I have joined, as far as peer exchange groups, mentorship organizations. I saw a void in the marketplace for an organization that was needed for the bootstrapping startup entrepreneur doing under $1 million in annual sales. And I think we talked about this. I picked the worst demographic and type of client because they need the most help and have the least amount of money. And so, but it's a passion project. So it's not all about the money. It's a passion project. It's for the people just like me that were just starting out, that didn't have the budget for the big ticket coaches like yourself, but they still needed access to information and some connections.
A nice passion to have. The typical boy band to circus to entrepreneur story. Yeah, I got it.
Yeah, just that normal story.
Yeah, exactly the same path as most people. What was the first business when you sold it? What was that business about?
If you've ever stayed at a hotel, and I got to give a warm, heartfelt thing of condolences out there in the world today, because the hotel industry lost a very prominent industry figure in Arnie Sorensen from Marriott International.
Absolutely.
And it just
as a young man.
Very young. And I'd met him several times, and he was just an amazing individual. Well, I sold to the hotel industry. We sold, if you ever stayed at a hotel and they've got those business center computers or computers in the lobby that you can use, or print your boarding pass kiosk back in the day. So I was one of the largest company providing that offering to the hotel industry.
Interesting. And so in leadership, you've met a lot of leaders, it's fairly clear. What is the leadership quality that you think is most important?
Positivity. There's no one, of course, but I just think that people love to be around an enthusiastic, inspirational, positive leader. All of the traditional characteristics still have to be there, But I just believe positivity is the number one thing.
There was a poll done years ago published in the Wall Street Journal that said that over 80% of CEOs are optimistic. I was surprised at how high the number was, but obviously it's an important quality to have. If you have the most important piece of advice you would give to a young startup business owner, or as you say, an entrepreneur, what would that be?
Know how to sell or hire someone to sell. You know, we in our organization, it's the number one thing that we see that our members have issues with. They're passionate about their product. Great. That's fantastic. They know what their product does. They sort of have an idea of who could use it, even though most startup dreamers think that everybody wants their product. Oh, hey, my market is everybody, right? Well, if everybody wants it, how come everybody doesn't have it, right? You know, so, but the challenge is most bootstrapping startup entrepreneurs don't have a sales background.
No.
And so they don't understand that somebody has to get out there and drum up business every day. And depending on your business model, which is kind of goes hand in hand with that, you've got to either have a salesperson, if it's not yourself, or you've got to have the money to advertise. And that's the biggest mindset thing that we have to get over into somebody's brain as fast as possible, is to spend more and more time on sales related activities than administrative and R&D type stuff.
Do you have a technique for doing that you found to be most successful across the board?
Yell at them. It's like it's like anything. You know, that's my form of leadership, but it's really just letting them know. You know, most bootstrapping entrepreneurs, and I'll keep saying that term a lot because the bootstrapping entrepreneur is a very different type of entrepreneur and unique in itself. They don't know what they don't know, and nobody has ever sat them down and told them to spend more time on sales related activities. So it's really just bringing it to their attention, which comes in building a relationship with them, listening to the problems that they're having, which are normally financially related problems in the beginning, and letting them know that everything will get solved with more money coming in the door.
The rest is blocking and tackling.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we'll get there when we get there, but let's take step one first.
Exactly. Speaking of selling, you have my book was called The Power of Losing Control, and yours is called The Power of Naivete. And so I'm going to be very naive, pretend I know nothing about this book, and sell me.
Basically, when people are trying to figure out what leads somebody to success, I had to think about, in my mind, what led to my success, and it was my ability to be naive. And I use that word very carefully because most people attribute the word naive to negativity, a negative thing. Oh, you're just naive, and it's kind of a negative term. But in the reality, the term in itself is neither negative or positive. It's just a fact. You know, we all are naive. I'm 50 years old and I'm still naive. I don't know what it's like to be 60 years old. I don't know what it's like to be where I'm going to be in the future. And when I think back to my childhood and I think about all the times in my life that I have reached a new level, it's because I didn't let fear get in the way. I thought of myself as a young, naive child that just said, I don't know what's going to happen, but let's go find out. I wasn't so smart that I tried to predict what the outcome was going to be. I said, I don't know what it's going to be, but I'm going to find out. And that naive mindset serves all of us well. And I find that the older I get and the more risk adverse I get, the more protective I get of the things that I have built throughout my life. I'm still naive for decision making, but I'm a little bit more conservative in my choices that I make. And so The Power of Naivety is my story. It's a very short, condensed version book that's read in 20 or 30 minutes, sharing a few stories of my life where I used naivety to make a decision that ended up working out.
That sounds very interesting. How do we get that?
You can get it on Amazon, or if somebody wants to shoot me an email, I'll give it to you for free. I did a TEDx talk around it, and it's just a book that I am more than happy to give to anybody at no charge. They can get a hold of me by email, my website, social media, and I will be more than happy to send somebody a PDF of it.
Thanks, appreciate that.
But if they want to buy it for $4, it's on Amazon.
And Amazon will get 3 of it.
Yep, absolutely.
You keep talking about bootstrapping. Can you elaborate on? It sounds hard. I mean, it sounds like it even sounds like a physical, difficult thing to do. But you say it's easier and more exciting than most people think. Can you give us your take on why?
You know, everything, I won't say everything. Most things in business are easy. It's just not, when you don't know what you're going to do, that doesn't mean that it's hard. It just means you don't know. We as individuals complicate things. So when
Absolutely.
I say to somebody, you got to make 100 phone calls a day, that's not hard. It's not difficult at all. We make it hard because we may or may not enjoy it, but we are the ones that make it hard. So bootstrapping a business is just a culmination of different activities that we have to do as individuals. Hard might be entering the world's strongest man competition. That might be hard for me. Running a triathlon with 0 prep, that would be hard. But running a business is very easy once you just know what you have to do. And the easiest way to figure out what to do is to hire guys like you.
When you, I see you as an expert in social media, and I see myself as more of a Luddite in that regard. But I know that it's very important today, and it can hurt or help you depending on how things are interpreted. How do you get your message across in social media in a way that's most healthy, helpful, and infectious? And I hate to use the word these days.
Yeah, well, like, for sure. And you're right. In this world, I can't remember if it was Warren Buffett who said you can spend 20 years building a reputation and lose it in five seconds. And nothing is more relative to that in the world today that we live in than being able to do something on social media and literally 5 minutes, you're done. From a relationship perspective and a reputation perspective. Then the number one thing that I found on social media, and it was a personal choice, I don't think that every business or every person that it's necessary, for those just listening, I did quotation marks, it's not necessary to be on social media or to use social media. There's plenty of successful people in life, both financially and non-financially, that are not on social media. So I don't think it's a requirement, it's a choice. And you can choose to dip your toes in the water, or you can choose to dive in. But depending on what results you want out of the use of social media, it's both strategic, it's creativity, and then consistency.
That's a good answer. I like that. When you have a culture, do you have an organization right now, Shawn?
Do I have an organization?
Yeah.
Yeah, Accelerators Organization.
Okay, and so you have a lot of people in your organization?
So we've got about 150 to 200 bootstrapping startup entrepreneur members. Mm-hmm. I consider ourselves just coming out of the startup proof of concept phase. wanted to, before we started marketing and advertising, I wanted to really know what kind of questions startup entrepreneurs were going to ask once they got into the formal organization. I wanted to build out the processes and be ready for scale, because I like my last company, I believe this company is going to scale pretty quickly once people know that something like this exists for the price that we charge and the type of experts that we make available. So yeah, we're coming out of our startup phase right now and getting ready to go into heavy marketing. And it's people all around the world, mostly here in the United States, but everything we do, fortunately for the business model I chose, which was more of a lifestyle business that I wanted to create, everything is virtual. So it was perfect timing for the world that we live in today with COVID out there. And so we've got members all around the world, mostly here in the US and Canada, but we've got members all around the world in Hungary, Hong Kong, the UK, New Zealand, South America. So it's really, really interesting.
Fun. That sounds like a lot of fun. The Accelerators Organization, you call it.
Yep.
Really interesting. And
the idea of that is, not to pitch, but the idea is that as a startup, what I learned is I took too long to grow initially. And because I didn't know what I was doing. And that's why I started the company. We want to show people that you really want to accelerate to hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars as fast as possible, which goes alongside my book. I've got to get somebody back to being positive as a leader, but I got to get people optimistic, and I got to get them building confidence as soon as possible to do what the business needs it to do. And that's the hardest part of a startup entrepreneur's journey, is just trusting that this is what the business needs and just to do it and accelerate as fast as possible. It's harder to run a $100,000 business than it is to run a $10 million business as a CEO. Because as a CEO of a $10 million business, you're just doing a few things. When you're a $100,000 business, you're doing everything.
Exactly right. Exactly right. I always think about the conductor orchestra. Everyone's out there and the orchestra's done tuning up, and then the conductor walks out and everyone applauds him and he bows, and then he starts conducting, and then the song's over and they applaud the one guy on the stage. It didn't make one sound.
Yeah.
Not one sound that they enjoyed.
That's a great analogy. That is so true.
But he knows his role.
Yeah.
One of the things I was impressed with you when we had a little chat a couple of weeks ago was you seemed very comfortable in your own skin. And so you're not braggadocious, you're not shy, you're enjoyable, you've got a good sense of humor, you laugh easy, you don't see what you don't know as a limitation in your life, you're not insecure, and you're a know-it-all. How do you define success, and how did you find a path to being this comfortable?
Well, let's just say that I have been braggadocious in my career. I have been rude and disrespectful and insecure and lacking of confidence. I think it's a common thing among people, especially like myself, that don't come from money and at an early age developed a desire to have a lot of money for no other reason than just to have a lot of money. And when you start making money, you want people to realize it and thinking that's going to make you seen as this amazing person, and then you get slapped or kicked in the face, with reality. And so what you see today is not what I've been forever. And when I'm 70 years old, probably a completely different person, I would think, as I continue to evolve. But as we talked about before, it was lots of mistakes, the willingness to learn and be aware. So to invest in some coaching and some therapy, and really doing that 360-degree view, which means I brought in my close friends that were willing to tell me the truth, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and not let my ego get in the way. And it's, Joe, it's a daily educational investment to continue to learn and evolve. And it's the same thing of my definition of success, which I just plagiarize and use Earl Nightingale's definition of success. Success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. It's when you get to a place in life, and sometimes you have to make a lot of money to get there, or you have to get a lot of notoriety, or you got to get a lot of fame, or you got to get a lot of friends, or you got to get a lot of materialistic items. At some point, when you can finally let the dust settle and understand that today, just knowing that I'm working on a goal or a dream of mine, that's what makes me a success. Because if I always lived my life saying I'm gonna be a success when, I'm gonna be unhappy the rest of my life. And so it took a long time to get to that point to realize that I'll always have goals, but to be alive and be healthy and working on it, that makes me a success.
It's a good answer. Thoughtful. And yeah, I always say that we humble ourselves to our lessons. We don't pride ourselves to our lessons. In fact, in those moments of pride, we are not the open satellite to all ideas in the universe that you described earlier. We're the opposite. We're a brick
More like
wall.
a refrigerator door that stays closed because you don't want to be going in there and eating it late at night.
Well, I'm wondering at this point, get a question or two from the audience. We only have a few minutes. Do you have time for this?
Absolutely.
How do we do this? Can I ask the producer here?
Probably say somebody that wants to ask a question, use the chat box there and feel free to ask a question of either Joe or myself, and it should be open. The chat box should be open.
The chat box is open.
I see we've actually got a couple of my AO members here in the audience with us today. Welcome, AO members.
Way to go.
And to everybody else, welcome, welcome.
Okay, I just saw some prompt, but it wasn't a question.
While we're waiting, Joe, what is your definition of success? I would love to hear that.
At the most basic level, it's a doer has to do. If you don't do, then you have a very difficult, sad life. At the higher level, to do and feel a sense of accomplishment from an intention that they set out to do, is sometimes that alone is success. Now, I added, I want to learn to be the best I can be. I want to know my capacities in life, and then I want to help other people. And I added 3 words after that, and enjoy it. And I think without enjoying it, there's no success. You can't claim success.
Yeah, I tell you, it's so funny you say that, because one of my mentors always says, hate the price, love the prize. And it reminds me of the last 6 weeks I went on a major, transformation health-wise, and I wanted to, get back down to a weight and feel good and what have you. And I mean, I got really disciplined. I didn't follow any other program other than, things I know that work for me. And I kept saying to myself every morning, every night when I'm doing my stuff, or every time I wanted to eat something, hate the price, love the prize. And I just got to where I just loved it. It was no longer a burden. It was like, I just really enjoy this pain.
A doer doing with intention and accomplishment. Very important. Yeah. And I'm not seeing any other questions. I know we're getting close to running out of time. Do you see any on your end, Shawn?
I don't see any. Everybody is. Okay. Everybody's gun shy of the chat session.
Okay. Well, that's absolutely fine. So your organization.
That just means that you're the greatest interviewer on the face of the planet, that nobody even has any questions because everything was perfectly covered.
I love the way you recognize talent when you see it.
Yes.
Not to brag. True, you ain't bragging.
I mean, it's not bragging if it's true, Joe.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. My hair in my eyes here. Let me just. Well, it's really been a pleasure. The organization is Accelerators Organization. They can get a hold of you for the book, The Power of Naivete. I really enjoy talking with you. I'm looking forward to meeting you in New York in a restaurant and sharing a nice bottle of wine.
Absolutely. I'm really looking forward for you to bring that 1982 Petrus. That's going to be so generously and nice of you. I really appreciate that.
It should be ready.
I think it should be showing pretty well.
Well, thank you again for the time, and really appreciate it. We'll look forward to our next conversation with Joe. I think we have a graphic on that put up in a minute, and it will be with a very, very interesting guy, not as interesting as Shawn, but a very interesting gentleman who's very successful like Shawn, and a great and well-respected leader. Not heard a bad thing ever about you or that gentleman, which is a big deal to say. I've heard bad things about you from you, but not from anybody else.
Well, I could introduce you to a bunch of those people if you need some intros.
All right. That'll be an interesting show. Thanks a lot, Shawn. We'll look forward to seeing everybody on 3/16/21 conversation with Ian Bernstein.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it, man.